Hello everyone, welcome back. Today I've got my little helpers Teddy and Pip with me for story time because they need cuddles and treats as well. So today I'm going to be reading you a story from a book that a friend of my father's gave me when I was very little, very little. Her name was Jane. She was an English teacher and she thought as a girl I should definitely have a look at this. And this is called The Practical Princess and Other Liberating Fairy Tales, and it's by J. Williams. It's fairy tales, but possibly not as you know them. So I'm going to read you a story called Petronella, and it has beautiful, I just want to show you, this is one of the illustrations from Petronella, beautiful silhouette style illustrations, gorgeous. Okay, are you sitting comfortably? Then I shall begin. This is called Petronella. In the kingdom of Sky Clear Mountain, 3 princes were always born to the king and queen. The oldest prince was always called Michael, the middle prince was always called George, and the youngest was always called Peter. When they were grown, they always went out to seek their fortunes. What happened to the oldest prince and the middle prince no one ever knew. But the youngest prince always rescued a princess, brought her home, and in time ruled over the kingdom. That was the way it had always been. And so far as anyone knew, that was the way it always would be. Until now. Now was the time of King Peter, the 26th, and Queen Blossom. An oldest prince was born, and a middle prince, but the youngest prince turned out to be a girl. How unusual. Well, said the king gloomily, we can't call her Peter. We'll have to call her Petronella. And what's to be done about it, I'm sure I don't know. There was nothing to be done. The years passed and the time came for the princes to go out and seek their fortunes. Michael and George said goodbye to the king and queen and mounted their horses. Then out came Petronella. She was dressed in travelling clothes with her bag packed and a sword by her side. If you think, she said, that I'm going to sit at home, you are very much mistaken. I'm going to seek my fortune too. Impossible, said the king. What will people say? Said the queen. Look, said Prince Michael, be reasonable, pet. Stay home. Sooner or later a prince will turn up for you. Typical. Petronella smiled. She was a tall, handsome girl with flaming red hair, and when she smiled in that particular way, it meant she was trying to keep her temper. I'm going with you, she said. I'll find a prince if I have to rescue one from something myself, and that's that. The grooms brought her out her horse. She said goodbye to her parents, and she went away behind her 2 brothers. They travelled into the flatlands below Sky Clear Mountain. After many days, they entered a great dark forest. They came to a place where the road divided into 3, and there at the fork sat a little, wrinkled old man covered with dust and spider webs. There he is, looking pretty chilled, but, you know. Prince Michael said haughtily, where do these roads go, old man? Rather rude, isn't it? Could have at least said hello. The road on the right goes to the city of Grass, the man replied. The road in the centre goes to the castle of Bliss. And the road on the left goes to the house of Albion the enchanter. And that's one. What do you mean, that's one? Asked Prince George. I mean, said the old man, I am forced to sit on this spot without stirring, and that I must answer one question from each person who passes by. And that's 2. Petronella's kind heart was touched. Is there anything I can do to help you? She asked. The old man sprang to his feet, and the dust fell from him like clouds. You have already done so, he said, for that question is the one that releases me. I have sat here for 62 years waiting for someone to ask me that. He snapped his fingers with joy. In return, I will tell you anything you wish to know. Where can I find a prince? Petronella said promptly. There is one in the house of Albion the enchanter, the old man asked. Ah, said Petronella. Well, then that's where I'm going.
Well, in that case, I'll leave you, said her oldest brother, for I'm going to the castle of Blitz to see if I can find my fortune there.
Good luck, said Prince George, for I'm going to the city of Gratz. I have a feeling my fortune is there. They embraced her and rode away. Petronella looked thoughtfully at the old man, who was combing spider webs and dust out of his beard. May I ask you something else? She said. Well, of course, anything. Suppose I want to rescue that prince from the enchanter. How would I go about it? I haven't any experience in these things, you see. The old man chewed a piece of his beard. I do not know everything, he said after a moment. I know that there are 3 magical secrets, which, if you can get them from him, will help you. Well, how can I get them from him? Asked Petronella. Offer to work for him. He will set you 3 tasks, and if you can do them, then you may demand a reward for each. You must ask him for a comb for your hair, a mirror to look into, and a ring for your finger. And then I don't know. I only know that when you rescue the prince, you can use these things to escape from the chamber and the enchanter. Well, it doesn't sound that easy, sighed Petronella. Nothing we really want is easy, said the old man. Look at me, I wanted my freedom and I had to wait 62 bloomin' years for it. Petronella said goodbye to him. She mounted her horse and galloped along the 3rd road. It ended at a low, rambling house with a red roof. It was a comfortable-looking house, surrounded by gardens and stables and trees heavy with fruit. On the lawn, in an armchair, sat a handsome young man with his eyes closed and his face turned to the sky. Petronella tied her horse to the gate and walked across the lawn. Excuse me, is this the house of Albion, the enchanter? She said. The young man blinked at her in surprise. I think so, he said. Yeah, I'm sure it is. And who are you? The young man yawned and stretched. I'm Prince Ferdinand of Firebright, he replied. Would you mind stepping aside? I'm trying to get a suntan here and you're standing in the way. Petronella sorted. You don't sound like much of a prince, she said. Well, that's funny, said the young man, closing his eyes. That's what my father always says. At that moment, the door of the house opened. Out came a man dressed all in black and silver. He was tall and thin, and his eyes were as black as a cloud full of thunder. Petronella knew at once that this must be the enchanter. Yeah. He browsed at her, bowed to her politely. And what can I do for you? I wish to work for you, said Petronella boldly. Albion nodded. I cannot refuse you, he said, but I warn you, it will be dangerous. Tonight I will give you a task, and if you do it, I reward you. But if you fail, you will die. Petronella glanced at the prince and sighed. Okay, if I must, she said. Very well. That evening, they all had dinner together in the enchanter's cosy kitchen. Then Albion took Petronella out to a stone building and unbolted its door. Inside were 7 huge dogs. You must watch my hounds all through the night, he said. Petronella went in, and Albion closed and locked the door. At once the hounds began to snarl and bark. They bared their teeth at her. But Petronella was a real princess. She plucked up her courage, and instead of backing away, she went towards the dogs. She began to speak to them in a quiet voice. They stopped snarling and sniffed at her, and she patted their heads. I see what it is, she said. You're lonely in here. Well, I'll keep you company. So all night long she sat on the floor and talked to the hounds and stroked them, and they lay close to her, panting. In the morning Albion came and let her out. Ah, she said, I see that you are brave. If you had run from the dogs, they would have torn you to pieces. Now you may ask for one thing that you want. I would like a comb for my hair, Petronella said. The enchanter gave her a comb carved from a piece of black wood. Prince Ferdinand was sunning himself and working at a crossword puzzle. Petronella said to him in a low voice, "I'm doing this for you, you know." "Oh, that's nice," said the prince. "What's selfish in 9 letters?" "You are," snapped Petronella, and she went to the enchanter. "I will work for you once more." That night, Albion led her to a stable. Inside were 7 huge horses. "Tonight," he said, "you must watch my steeds." He went out and locked the door. At once the horses began to rear and neigh. They pawed at her with iron hooves. But Petronella was a real princess. She looked closely at them and saw that their coats were rough and their manes and tails full of burrs. "I see what it is," she said. "You're hungry and you're dirty." She brought them as much hay as they could eat and began to brush them. All night long she fed them and groomed them, and they stood quietly in their stalls. In the morning, Albion let her out. "You are kind as you are brave," he said. "If you had run from them, they would have trampled you under their hooves. What will you have as your reward?" I would like a mirror to look into," said Petronella. And the enchanter gave her a mirror made of silver. She looked across the lawn at Prince Ferdinand. He was doing exercises leisurely. "He was certainly handsome," she said to the enchanter. "I'll work for you once more." That night, Albion led her to the loft above the stables. There, on perches, were 7 great hawks. "Tonight," he said, "you must watch my falcons." As soon as Petronella was locked in, the hawks began to beat their wings and scream at her. Petronella laughed. "That's not how birds sing," she said. "Listen." She began to sing in a sweet voice. The hawks fell silent, and all night long she sang to them, and they sat like feathered statues on their perches listening. In the morning, Albion said, "You are talented as you are kind and brave. If you had run from them, then they would have pecked and clawed at you without mercy. What would you like now?" "I would like a ring for my finger," said Petronella. The enchanter gave her a ring made from a single diamond. All that day and all that night Petronella slept, for she was very tired. But early the next morning she crept into Prince Ferdinand's room. He was sound asleep and wearing purple pyjamas. "Wake up," whispered Petronella. "I'm going to rescue you." Ferdinand awoke and stared sleepily at her. "Oh, what time is it?" "Never mind that," said Petronella. "Come on." "But I'm sleepy," Ferdinand objected, "and it's so pleasant here." Petronella shook her head. "You're not much of a prince," she said, "but I suppose you're the best I can do." There's a new picture there. She grabbed him by the wrist and dragged him out of bed. She hauled him down the stairs. His horses and hers were in separate stables, and she saddled them quickly. She gave the prince a shove, and he mounted his horse. She jumped on her own horse, seized the prince's reins, and away they went like the wind. They had not gone far when they heard a tremendous thumping. Petronella looked back. A dark cloud rose between them, and beneath she saw the enchanter. He was running with great strides, faster than the horses could go. "What shall we do?" she cried. "Don't ask me," said Prince Ferdinand grumpily. "I'm all shaken to bits by this fast riding." Petronella desperately pulled out the comb. "The old man said this would help me," she said, and because she didn't know what else to do with it, she just threw it on the ground. At once a forest rose up. The trees were so thick that no one could get between them, not even the enchanter. Away went Petronella with the prince, but the enchanter turned himself into an axe and began to chop. Right and left he chopped, slashing, and the trees fell before him. Soon he was through the wood, and once again Petronella heard his footsteps thumping behind. She reined the horses, she took out the mirror and threw it on the ground. At once a wide lake spread out behind them, grey and glittering. Off they went again, but the enchanter sprang into the water, turning himself into a salmon as he did so. He swam across the lake and leaped out of the water onto the bank. Petronella heard him coming, thump, 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 behind them again. This time she threw down the ring. It didn't turn into anything, but just lay shining on the ground. The enchanter came running up, and as he jumped over the ring, it opened wide and snapped up around him. It held his arms tight to his body in a magical grip from which he could not escape. "Well," said Prince Ferdinand, "that's the end of him." Petronella looked at him with annoyance. Then she looked at the enchanter, held fast in the ring. "Oh, bother! I can't just leave him there. He'll starve to death." She got off her horse and went up to him. "If I release you," she said, "will you promise to let the prince go free?" Albion stared at her in astonishment. "Let him go free?" he said. "What are you talking about? I'm glad to get rid of him." It was Petronella's turn to look surprised. "I don't understand," she said. "Weren't you holding him prisoner?" "Certainly not," said Albion. "He came to visit me for a weekend, and at the end of it he said, 'Oh, it's so pleasant here, I think I'll stay.' I'm very polite, and I said, 'Of course, stay a couple of days,' but he just stayed on and on and on, and he just wouldn't go home. I didn't like to be rude to a guest, and I just couldn't kick him out. I don't know what I'd done if you wouldn't have dragged him away." But then, said Petronella, "but then why did you come running after him in this way?" What do you think the twist's going to be? "Oh gosh, I wasn't chasing him," said the enchanter. "I was chasing you. You are just the girl I've been looking for. You're brave and kind and talented and beautiful as well." "Oh," said Petronella. "Oh, I see." She said. "How do I get this ring off you?" "No, you have to give me a kiss." She did so. The ring vanished from around Albion and reappeared on Petronella's finger. "Well, I don't know what my parents will say when I come home with you instead of a prince," she said. "Well, let's go and find out, shall we?" said the enchanter cheerfully. He mounted one horse and Petronella the other, and off they trotted side by side, leaving Prince Ferdinand of Firebright to walk home as best he could. And that was the story of Petronella from the Practical Princess and Other Liberating Fairy Tales by J. Williams. Any comments on the story? If you're in Rowan or Birch class, bung them on Class Dojo. Anyone else that's watching, I hope you enjoyed that. And meeting Teddy and Pip. Thank you. Bye. Keep safe. You alright, babies?